why do we care about this? Well, everything is increasing in velocity as technical solutions are evolving, and the complexity of those solutions is also increasing. We want to make deliberate change in our workplace environments rather than just allowing things to just happen. A lot of times that's what happens. Maybe management finds a solution and says, we're all going to implement this today. Ansible is the winner. And everyone's like, wait, we had a working solution. Or some other change is decided on without deliberate thought. Fear exists throughout our cultures, and fear is really dangerous because it slows us down. It adds hesitation when we should be acting because maybe we don't feel like we're the authority. It adds stress to our environments because when we work, it might be a economic challenge for us if we lose our job. So risk means if I cause something to fail, I might have to find a new job. I have to make money in order to pay my bills. And it also silences us. If I feel like I cannot voice my thoughts about something because I might get harassed about it, I might be considered wrong and maybe I shouldn't have been hired for that job, then I'm not going to share my points of view. And each of us come from so many different backgrounds. We all have value to add to the conversation. So DevOps has a lot of conflicting messages out there. When we talk about DevOps, a lot of times people say it's about culture, not about tools. But at the same time, people say DevOps is about automation and CI and CD and containers and microservices and everything else. But the truth of the matter is that tools are reflections of our culture. They tell us about ourselves, they impact us and change what we do and how we do it. When DevOps originally came around, what happened was it was actually Yahoo, a company called Flickr within Yahoo. John Osbaugh and Paul Hammond were both managers. One was a developer manager and one was operations manager. And they both agreed, hey, we're trying to solve this problem. We're one team. So they all came together and did team meetings together and worked together to solve the problems. In a velocity talk called 20 Deploys a Day, Dev and Operations Collaboration, someone was sitting in the audience, Andrew Clay Schaefer. And as he watched this talk, he sent out a tweet saying DevOps. Across the world, Patrick Dubois was also seeing this and wishing he could have been there at Velocity. And so someone else said to him, hey, why don't you start your own conference? So DevOps Days was born. When people thought about it, they thought, oh, this is because I want 20 deploys a day. But that was an outcome and not what was the important aspect. The important aspect was the collaboration and cooperation between the development and operations team that allowed them to have 20 deploys a day. For Flickr, it makes sense. It's a website, right? You can make little changes and not impact anything. It's not like you're pulling out storage underneath everybody. So when it comes down to it, when I heard about DevOps, I thought, that's kind of stupid. Like, where I come from, my background, I've had development experience, operations experience. I've done all kinds of different things in education and small startups. And I was like, this is nonsense. Of course this makes sense. We all should be talking to each other. Doesn't everybody collaborate? And it wasn't until I was in a position where I'd been there for 5-6 years, and I was the critical person. I was the single point of failure, but I didn't realize it at the time. I was trying to build this system that had immense capacity, reliability, scalability, all of these things. And it worked great. It had hundreds of thousands of requests per second, but I was the only one who could run it. And as we tried to grow our team, my management was saying, Jennifer, you need to write clear documentation. You need to make more checklists. You need to make more automation. Everything I did, I was still the only one who could run the system. The developers would come to me, the QA would come to me. People would tell me, it must be nice not to have to worry about getting fired or getting laid off. And I felt like, this sucks. I hate this job. I'm not doing interesting things. I'm getting paged at 2 in the morning to help people and trying to figure out what's wrong. I was incentivized to do the same things over and over again. I would get paid large sums of money, and it was impacting my health and my family. And I didn't realize that just because people say, yeah, this is the way to do it, and oh, do these things, that's what you need to do, it wasn't really what I needed to do. When we look at creating these places where people are the single points of failure, we're creating systems that impact people personally. I wasn't able to go hiking anymore. This turned into the cycle of not spending time with family. I was always on call. In Germany, I know there's like certain laws about how much you can work in a particular week. I don't know how much that is impacting the culture here. But for me, a lot of people in the US, this turns into burnout and we start getting grumpy. So it impacts our teams because we might not be as bouncy smiley as normal, but you don't have to be a bouncy smiley person in order to provide value to your team. But what you are creating, if you are a single point of failure, is you are the single point of failure. No one person should be a point where if that person isn't there, that you're gonna have a problem. And from an organization standpoint, that's a huge issue. At some point, if you're getting all those constraints on you, you are gonna leave, right? And the company isn't going to be able to replace you because all of the complexity is inside of you. So it's not just personal stories that like individuals could see that DevOps has value. Every year, how many people know about the state of the DevOps report? Yeah, it comes out from Puppet Labs. One of my coworkers, Nicole Fosgrim, she actually does a lot of the research aspects, the scientific aspects. And what they found is all of these values that come from high-performing teams that are doing DevOps, where you're doing collaboration, cooperation within the teams. You can actually do more change without having failure. The State of DevOps report is available online for free. You do have to sign up for something with Puppet in order to download it, but that's cool because then you can go look at it and read the whole long report. I encourage everyone to participate in it next year because it's helpful to get as many data points as possible. So I'm going to talk about a typical team. And this will be very familiar. So a typical team, we've got a project manager, and this project manager discovers there's a problem in the system. And she realizes we need to get this fixed. She identifies the problem, and she talks to a manager that has potential resources that could help solve this problem. Now, this manager knows that right now he doesn't have enough resources, but he thinks he might have a few friends that might be able to participate in this. And so we got a young engineer. Now, he doesn't have a lot of experience. In fact, his previous career is completely in another field. It's in agriculture, right? Now, he has a hobby and he has interests. He likes to play with robots. And so he could potentially have a natural skill for this stuff. So he becomes out of a job and he goes to his friend here and mentor and says, hey, I need a job. And so his friend says, you know what? I have a job for you. It doesn't pay much, if at all, but you get to travel a lot. So knowing that he's got a junior engineer, he recognizes he needs some senior engineers. And he doesn't have a lot of money, so he goes and finds some contractors. Now, his senior engineer doesn't believe in any of this newfangled technology. He's like, I've got my skills and I can do this, right? I'm going to solve this part of your problem. He doesn't believe in any of this other stuff, but it's cool. He can work with the guy. And they're like, yeah, that sounds good. Now, we've got another senior engineer who doesn't speak English as well, if at all, right? But he can communicate, and he's really good at his job. And so all together, we have this great team who is able to come together and work together to solve a problem. But remember the original project manager who had identified the risk, well, there wasn't enough time, didn't have enough resources, they didn't get there in time, and they completely failed. Now, you would think some teams are like, oh, I failed, this is it, this is over, we're all fired, I'm not playing this anymore. This team came together and became stronger. And they went on to save the galaxy, right? So, this is the team. Now, we can identify there's issues with this team. Maybe if they had a little more diversity, not just in the language barriers, they might have accomplished more, but it's okay. So let's talk about what is an effective DevOps approach. Effective DevOps has 4 pillars. The first one is collaboration. Now, collaboration is about individuals working together with shared interactions and input, building towards a common goal, right? So if I say I have an ops team and a dev team, and I'm like, they have different goals, then there's a problem. I've created a silo. But if I say, let's bring these people together, they can have different management, but we have this common goal, and we can define something as a common goal, then we can actually collaborate and be more DevOps. Collaboration comes in multiple different types. It's not just about pairing. It's not just about peer code review. You want to be monitoring for single points of failure. Because when you have a single point of failure, I never want to be responsible for being a single point of failure ever again. So it's very hard for me to communicate. I want responsibility, but I don't want to own anything, right? I want to know that if I leave, I didn't create a system in which the system will fail. I want to build really cool product without that problem. We also want to monitor for burnout. So some people might think, why do I care about monitoring for burnout? That's HR's problem. Well, no, because a lot of times burnout is a symptom of the system in place. It's not just about individuals. I can have issues in my personal life that contribute to burnout. But if I go into a team and I see that there's a bunch of people burned out, I know I don't want to work there. Because I don't need to save the day there. They need to save their own systems, right? If I'm in a good team and I notice that one of my teammates is burning out, I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to say, hey, I think you need to take a vacation. Because when it comes down to it, if there's 3 of us and one of us leaves, that means 2 of us are trying to shoulder some kind of burden. We really need to be aware of how much our individual teams are able to have capacity. Smarter teams have been shown to build better value. And a smarter team specifically has a few features. 1, everyone talks. Not just vocally, like with my voice, but through email. They participate in the conversation. This means making sure that introverts get an opportunity to share their thoughts and feels, right? If I have a meeting, I should have an agenda ahead of time to say, here's what we're going to talk about. That gives the introverts time to think about stuff, then process the meeting itself, come back and provide feedback. It also means a theory of mind. And what that means is individuals who understand that each of us have different motivations. I have my motivation of why I'm in this office doing this particular job and what I want out of it. Everyone else has other different motivations. As I'm communicating and talking to people, I need to be aware and keep that in mind as I'm thinking about what's going on. So a smart team recognizes and has empathy for everybody's point of view. Doesn't mean that everybody has to agree. It means that everybody understands we're all coming from different places. The second pillar is building inter-team relationships. And so when we talk about building inter-team relationships, it's within your organization, it's also across organizations. Conferences like this, where we bring in people from all over the place, including other countries, are really great for this because you're building knowledge across teams and across organizations. Affinity is a signal to your organization about how strong it is to withstand any kind of issues that come up. It shortens the time to get work done because you can find people that might know a little bit more about what you're trying to do. It also reduces communication barriers. If I kind of have these casual, small, weak ties with a lot of people, I know more about different things. I can talk to people who are working on different subjects. I don't have to be the expert on everything because I can't be, right? There's so much that's going on, so many services that are growing. We don't want to do all of the things in-house. Downstairs, I heard the talk on Ansible where someone was talking about all these different services and how difficult it is to know all of this stuff. And it's true. We can't all be experts in everything. We need other people to be those experts. And we want to build trust based on regard. When I show you that I know knowledge, and I am there for you and answer your questions, and you show me that you have knowledge and share with me your knowledge, then we're going to build that trust that will go across the time and space, right? Organizations come and go. Like Yahoo's about to not exist as it is, right? But all of the friendships and relationships that I built while I was at Yahoo, I still retain, and I connect with those people regularly. So now all of these people distributed across all these different companies, I learned so much about what they're doing. Going back to what I originally said about tools, a lot of people saying DevOps is all about culture and not tools. Tools are part of our culture. They are accelerators that actually can lead us to really great things. But they can also destroy cultures. If we don't pay attention to what we're doing and why we're adopting tools, we can completely mess up our organization and its culture. We have to look at tools and have and identify a single point of authority for choosing the tools that we use. For example, when I talk about that, I'm saying, I don't need my organization to tell me what editor to use. I know what editor I can use and what I get out of that editor, that familiarity. My desk and my work environment, I should be defining that. Some of us are introverts, some of us are extroverts. Some of us are ambiverts and like to have people come and go. So many companies define the work environment and say, like, this will be good for everyone. But the reality is it's good for no one because the introverts get mad at the extroverts and these open space offices. Why are you talking all the time? Well, it's all open. This is how it's supposed to be. Or if we're in little cubicles, oh, I don't get to talk to people at any point in time. From the group perspective, thinking about workflow, how we get work done, each group will have a way of doing that. The organization shouldn't define that, and the individual shouldn't either. This is where we have to make compromises to say, well, I work best like this. That's nice, but what we're trying to achieve is not you being awesome. We're trying to be we are awesome. DevOps is about the we, not the me. An organization, like single points of authority, examples might be bug tracking or work visualization. Across teams, teams need to be able to see what work is in progress, what's the status of various things. If you have different teams using different tools, whether it's Bugzilla or Jira or any of the ticket trackers out there, you're gonna have your dev and your ops teams, your QA teams, unable to see what each other are doing and getting that resistance. So tools are critical to DevOps in how they are chosen, how they're implemented, and how they're used by humans. Tools are not replacing humans. They need to work alongside of us. And we need to be able to use them. So many things we learn over and over again because we don't pay attention. And by we, I mean all of us as an industry. The airplane industry, many years ago, in the 60s, they identified problems with automation because they said, look, our pilots are getting stupid or potentially can get stupid because they're not paying attention Their jobs are no longer interesting, and they're just relying on the tools. Just the other day, I'm reading an article about how they had this massive failure because they couldn't figure out, there was this flight that was flying to, can't remember if it was Singapore, but they were coming from Sydney, and they landed in Melbourne, and they're like, well, you just didn't understand how to change the tools. The tools just didn't work. And so the more they touched the tools, the more they broke them. And so they couldn't fly to the right place. And so how many times do we look at something and go, well, I'm going to choose this tool because it's the new thing, and it's cool to me, but I'm going to leave and then let other people determine and manage it. The reality is we need to be able to manage these tools and use them, not just have them replace us, because we have to be part of the system. And the fourth pillar is scaling. And I don't mean like scaling and growing. I mean about like if you imagine rock climbing and you're scaling a particular challenge, sometimes you need to make a dynamic leap. Sometimes you need to be slow and careful. And so it's about how our organization has challenges and how we approach those challenges depending on the life cycle of our organization. When we're a young startup, we'll have different priorities and where we're going to spend our resources than when we're later on in the organization's life cycle. So really, effective DevOps is about cats, right? Collaboration, affinity, tools, and scaling. I mean, that's why the internet is full of pictures of cats. So let's talk about framing the narrative. So there's two parts to this, the DevOps Compact and some of the misconceptions that we have in our environments. So DevOps Compact is really the devs and the ops, dogs and cats with their different feelings, sharing a mutual understanding, like committing to having a mutual understanding of what we're trying to do. What is our goal? How are we going to get there? And how we're going to keep continuously checkpointing. We're not going to just assume, right? If I am at a party and Jeff sees that I'm there and he doesn't know how to get there, get back to his place, but he knows that I live kind of near to where he lives. So he just says to himself, I'll leave when she leaves, and then I will get home. Because I know once she gets to her house, how to get there. So we're driving on that precarious hilltop in the dark, and I see a car behind me, and I'm like, who is that? Why are they following me? And I make evasive maneuvers. I go too fast. I go too slow. I try to get this person off my tail. That's what happens when we're not having a cohesive mutual understanding and commitment to this process. Now, imagine if Jeff told me, hey, Jennifer, I'm going to follow you home to this point, and this is why. And so then we both have a goal. My goal and his goal is to get home safely. And I have the knowledge that I'm going to make sure that I signal, and I'm going to go at an appropriate speed so that he can follow me. And that's kind of what we do when we say, okay, here's how we're going to do get requests. We're going to do pull requests in this way. These are the people who have access to commit to master. This is how we're going to do testing. All of these things, we're making commitments to each other and continuously repairing the understanding. When it comes to misconceptions, there are many. One of the primary misconceptions is when people are interviewing, they're always looking for the one. If we have the one, they will save us. Now, I've experienced this at many companies where it's like, if only we could find this person, or if we could duplicate you. And it's like, no, what you're looking for is different people who don't have the same skills necessarily. They have some skills, but if you hire a rock star, a ninja, you might end up having them chase away all of your solid engineers. Imagine for a moment your job rec for a site reliability engineer. This is essentially what it looks like. It's just a bunch of text where you're asking for something. And if you think about this, if Luke were to see this job rec and go, oh, I need to be a certified Jedi Master, I need to carry 80 pounds of Yoda on my back for 1 mile, like, He wouldn't go in wanting to do this job. He would say, that's not for me. I don't have any of those skills. But the thing about it is, Luke fits the model of what was needed, right? He grew those skills on the job. So what we're really saying is, we don't need to use interviews as gauges of skill, because that's not what we're looking for. We can't identify really what people's skills are, because we all come from so many different backgrounds. What our expertise is. What does it mean to be an expert ops person? There is no one single answer. Instead, we're telling each other stories. You're telling me a story about how awesome it is to work at your company. I'm telling you how awesome I am and ignoring all the times where maybe I might be annoying because I've got all this energy all day, and you're like, go calm down and don't drink any more coffee. So it's about telling each other stories that we want to hear from each other. There's also a misconception about education. So many people, at least in the US, I don't know if it's the same here, where you go to a conference or you go to training and people are still on call. It's like, oh, your education is a vacation. And it's like, no, education is not a vacation. And education isn't a benefit for the company. I mean, it benefits the company, but your company should be investing in you so that you can be the best person you can for the job. You should be growing your skills constantly because the whole system is changing. Not just that, but all the people that you're meeting, you can't be the expert of everything, but you can meet people who you can have weak ties with and build that affinity and know who to talk to when that time comes. There's this idea that we can have best practices and that there is this right way to do everything. And if I just go to enough conferences, or if I go to a talk, or if I just buy that book, it'll tell me the best way to do something. The reality is context. We want to have good cultures. We want to build great products that come from great teams that all come from great culture. So we have to look at what is it that's going on now? Who are the people on our team? Identify their backgrounds and identify what's going to be effective for that team. What do they need? Do they need to grow? Do they need more resources? If we look at all these different teams across the different sci-fi and fantasy genres and TV, they don't all choose to do a team the same way. They're all different. Some people might say, well, Jennifer, I tell my story and I talk to people and I tell them what we need, but nobody listens. The problem is we are all individuals. We have our story and our perspective. It takes thousands of voices to tell a single story. So one signal is not enough. It's why it's important that everybody is part of the collaboration and communication on a team. You have to get all the different perspectives. And so if you don't have diversity in your team, you might only be hearing one story. Before you even share stories, it's important to listen. Who else is involved? What is their current state? What are the different cultures and the beliefs that are defining why they feel the way they feel? Because this goes back to the theory of mind and building smarter teams. In that experiment where they studied what is effective with a team, are the smart people, if we get all the smart people on a team, are they going to accomplish more? It wasn't those teams that accomplished more. It was the teams where you had that diverse set of voices and that people understood where the different perspectives of where people were coming from. So we want to strengthen our affinity and we want to build bridges. And building bridges is done through shared stories and alleviating the fear culture. So shared stories help us articulate our specific values and ideas. Companies a lot of time will have these are their company values, but it won't tell a story. How many people have like their company as these are our values? Nobody? Some people? In the US, a lot of times it's like an empty blanket statement of here's our values. We value authenticity and respect. but they don't connect to the individual. So everybody's like, those are just our values. I can tell you the 6 values, but I don't know how it applies to me. You need to have things that go from the top down and the bottom up. Shared values and ideas. They explain the historical significance. Why do we do the things that we do? In data centers, why is there a glass case on top of the red button to push stop all the time for all the things in the data center? Because someone at some point pressed that red button and caused a big failure and a big outage. So now we want to make sure that nobody mistakes it as a light switch. Shared stories help us pass knowledge. We can't all experience everything, and so a compelling story allows us to share some knowledge with other people so they don't have to experience it. It's still not as good as experiencing it itself, but at least we can pass some knowledge. And we influence our community. When you come together in events like this and like DevOps days, you can talk to other people and share your stories and influence how they go back to their environments and what they do. We cultivate empathy and understanding, especially if we have different people speaking about different stories and connecting with all the different people within the audience, whether they come from banking or financial industries that are not directly banking or security or whatever it is that they're working on. These shared stories can help us alleviate the fear, help us to no longer slow down and hesitate, be able to respond to all of the changes that are coming on in our environments. One of the fear or identifiers of fear that I see in companies is the stormtrooper syndrome, where people don't feel like they have the agency to go out and do the things they need to do. They adhere to a particular role. That's not my job. Well, if you say that's not my job, that's not very DevOps, right? It might not be your job, but what you are doing might be that you talk to the person who's like, hey, I need this, and you work with them to find what it is that they really need. If we think about this role adherence, if a farm boy and a smuggler and a princess stuck to their role, would they have accomplished what they did? If I think that I'm a farm boy, then I might not go off and be a Jedi Knight. We constrain individuals to the detriment of our teams when we say a developer does this or an ops person does this. I know that I script, I like writing programs, also love building systems. I don't ever want someone to tell me, well, this is your little box. This is what you need to care about. I care about it all because the value is not in the one thing. It's in all things. Alleviating the fear also helps to prevent learned helplessness, where people don't fix things because it's like, I can't do this. I've done it this way forever, and this is what I need to do. One of the big problems I see is where people no longer realize that they're afraid. They think they're happy doing what they're doing. And it's the Borg syndrome, where it's, I am part of this particular type of culture. You hear things like, oh, you wanted to go with your family this week? Do you really want to be on this team? Like, we need to be here this weekend. We don't celebrate when people come or leave the team. When people leave teams, that should be a time to say, hey, congratulations on your next step, right? Because the industry is small. We are going to connect with each other over and over again. And when we have this Borg syndrome, we encourage system blindness, where we don't understand that we're failing. I experienced this at a previous company. I won't say what company, but when I joined, it was great, diverse perspectives, family friendly. But by the time I left, it was very much a people working glass boxes. You need to work all the time, all hours. You really shouldn't be here if you don't fit this. And I realized that was like the breaking point for me. I was like, this is not good anymore. I actually had a young engineer page me out for something, and the problem was not something that mattered. And he really didn't need to page me. And he was like, no, I gotta get it fixed. I'm like, it's Sunday at 2 p.m. You don't need this fixed right now. We'll work on it tomorrow. And he was so stressed out. And I had a little talk with him. And he was like, you mean I can go away and eat lunch? I'm like, yes, you can go eat lunch. This is going to take hours and hours. It's a long processing job. You don't have responsibility. I don't have responsibility. This is not needed for a week. You do not need to be like sitting on this all the time. So the next day I go into the office and I realize he called me on my work phone first. So he was at work thinking I was also at work on a Sunday. And I realized this is not what we want to be encouraging, especially young engineers just joining the industry. Another symptom of fear is when you see people going, I'm not doing that. Because you know if you take on the red shirt, you're going to get blamed, right? Everybody knows in Star Trek, well, you might not know, but in Star Trek, if you're a red shirter, you're going to die, right? They're the extras. And so if everybody knows if you take on responsibility that you're going to get blamed for it failing, you don't take on the responsibility. We want people to rise up and take on opportunities. So today I've talked about the foundation of DevOps, framing your narrative and building bridges. I've talked about managing fear and how we can manage our increased velocity and complexity deliberately by decreasing stress and having full participation of our team by eliminating fear. If you want to learn more, Effective DevOps is out in print, and you can also contact me. And as Yoda, our esteemed mentor, says, DevOps or DevOps not, there is no try. Thank you so much. It has been a pleasure to speak to you.